So I had written a book some years ago called Get a Life, and based on a sketch I did, which was Get a Life. And it was all done in fun, and I wrote this book sort of trying to discover what all of you were doing here. And I finally realized in the book, after I'd done some due diligence, that you were here to see each other. How bizarre that was to me, because I thought you were coming to see me. But it turns out that you are doing what so many of you have done in the past and are doing now, and obviously will do in the future. You're coming to see each other and have the fun of seeing, of the group meeting. So, and in writing the book, I discovered, I had started finding individual stories that filled the book. The couple that I remember vividly was a young man who was psychotically shy, if you will. He couldn't talk in front of people except when he had his cat. He dressed his cat up as Captain Kirk. And he was able to talk to anybody. He became very verbal with his cat. Now, another person who came regularly was a young lady who had multiple personalities, all of them Star Trek. She spoke in voices. She'd speak in out would come Spock's voice. Out would come George Takei's voice. No, I said I didn't. It was the strangest behavior, and yet she was coming to the convention to feel a part of everybody else. And so that was my first inkling of what was happening at conventions. In the last few weeks of shooting, making a documentary is like having a conversation with somebody you don't know too well. You're wondering, I wonder where this conversation is going. And gradually, as they open up, you begin to see things in that person that you didn't as a result of talking to them. That's what making a documentary is like. You don't know what you're going to discover. You're hoping that you will discover something interesting. And what I found on the captains, which was an hour and a half documentary on the actors who played the captain, and what differences they have, and what things they have in common, and the sacrifices that were made in order to play the role, I discovered, and in the captains, about the third day into the shooting, as I woke up in the morning, I was saying to myself, what have I got? What have I shot? Where am I going? And then the answers began to appear. In exactly the same way with what I'm calling Fanatics, but it may change to Get a Life. I'm not sure. In fact, I'd like to take a poll. I discovered the same thing. 3 days into it, I thought, where am I? What have I? And suddenly I did 2 interviews that made the whole thing come together. One interview was with the guy who was putting the convention on, and talking about your passion, talking about what you have sacrificed in many instances to get here, to be here, to be among them. And then that day, that third day, the next interview I did was a college professor. And I had read Joseph Campbell years ago when he was popular about the hero. I tried to get through the book, A Hero with 1,000 Faces, but he talked about mythology and the need all through the history of man, that man has needed a mythology to incorporate, to understand, to have a belief system in the world around him. And that evolved, that was what the Greeks said with their Greek gods, and all the way through the ages and down, and it metamorphosized into religion. And here we are today. Look at the number of us here. And we're here for a very valid reason. It's part of the culture. It's part of the mythology. It's part of the hero worship. You are partaking by getting an autograph, by putting on a costume. There were stories in interviews of a couple who got on a plane in Japan in costume. And they sat wherever they sat with their Star Trek costume on and walked through the airport, and they loved the idea that people were looking at them, and they had the best time. And everybody was like you all are here today, having the best time, partaking in something that is a cultural phenomena, and we're all part of it. And it's such a pleasure to see you all, and we should celebrate the fact that we're all here today.